Hi. The film I'll be talking about today is Mean Streets. Mean Streets was directed by Martin Scorsese and was released in 1973. This film stars Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro. This is arguably Martin Scorsese's first masterpiece. We all know he would go on to make a few more, and what's interesting is knowing his career catalog as we do today. When you go back and look at this film that he made in 1973 on an extremely low budget, what's amazing is how well it holds up when you compare it to the films that he would make years later as a much more seasoned, well-funded filmmaker. Even some of those films, as good as they are, like Goodfellas and Casino and Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, all of it, there's a certain amateur quality to this film that in a way enhances this film. And when you know the backstory of this film and how he was struggling to get it made, and even Francis Ford Coppola helped him out with lending him money, this was not a calculated decision, but it gave this film a certain realism that films that were a little more polished later on in his career almost seemed to lack. And that is such a charming aspect to this film. It gives it a certain credibility that films that would come later, when you have a bigger budget, often seem to lack. And this film, as we all know, Scorsese is a master when it comes to films on organized crime. This would be his first real film dealing with organized crime. And he'd worked with Keitel before in Who's That Knocking at My Door? This would be his first film with Robert De Niro, and we all know what a partnership he and Scorsese would go on to have. And knowing that he's still a young filmmaker, Keitel and De Niro are still two very young actors, and seeing De Niro on screen before he kind of fell prey to doing an impression of Robert De Niro himself, he's still fresh. And you see the talent and the effortless acting he does in this film, and it just oozes out of him. And Keitel also, for somebody who is not well known at the time and is not movie star handsome, has a certain kind of presence that cannot be it just comes natural. He, on the screen, your eyes stay on him. He has a certain credibility with the viewer early on in this film that pulls us in. And he's real. This isn't an actor like a 6'5" guy or somebody who's more of a caricature than a character. Keitel is somebody we would know. Somebody that you would really see in the streets of New York. So this film, we know, has a respectable realism to it that as an audience we can appreciate and enjoy. And as I said earlier, this film was made in 1973, and this film is set in New York. A lot of the interior scenes were shot in LA, which is crazy if you've seen this film or when you see it, to think that any part of this film was shot in Los Angeles, because it is the quintessential New York film. It screams New York. It doesn't just say New York, it screams it, and violently. And it's such a remarkable feat that Scorsese could create that kind of an atmosphere, that kind of a vibe, in a place like LA that's as far from New York as you can possibly get. And what's so great about this film is it shows gangsters and people in organized crime who are at the bottom of the food chain. And Godfather, which had come out in 1972, about this family with Don Corleone, where they have the guy played by Al Martino to come sing. I think he plays Johnny Fontaine in the movie, and he comes and sings at the wedding. These are very rich, affluent people who live the glamorous mafia lifestyle. These are people at the bottom who are just getting by in this little Italy neighborhood in New York. They're not going to movie premieres. They're not driving the fancy cars. They're, if anything, exploiting those just a little bit lower than them. And that's how they get by. There's got to be somebody that you can scam. And it kind of stays in their area. They're in their neighborhood, and it's sort of a Lord of the Flies environment. And this film starts off with a narration. Who we know it's supposed to be an inner dialogue with Charlie with himself about his reluctance, about his involvement in this lifestyle. And this film deals with the theme of Catholicism and Catholic guilt for this character who has a fidelity to his religious beliefs, but lives in a world that is in stark contrast to that. And he has not made peace with the hypocrisy of the lifestyle that he lives. And we see him early on at a church where he's putting his finger over a flame as if he's testing himself against the fires of hell. You get the feeling that Charlie feels like he's going there, that just simply going there to church, telling the priest what he's done, getting okay, say a few Hail Marys, do this and do that, and you're absolved. He doesn't believe that. For him, that's not good enough. And as a viewer, you respect that about Charlie. He's not somebody who just says, hey, this is how it is in the neighborhood, I'm good, I'll go do my penance, and then my slate's wiped clean. He doesn't feel that way. He feels guilt, he feels remorse, he's disgusted with the lifestyle in which he's a daily participant. But what's the way out of it? This is not necessarily a lifestyle he chose. This is a lifestyle that was thrust upon him. He was born into it. The way certain kids take on, the butcher shop. Their dad was a butcher, they were born into it. It's the family business. This is not the life he chose, the life that was chosen for him. And he feels powerless to get out of it. He doesn't know how. Then that juxtaposed with the character of Johnny Boy, played brilliantly by Robert De Niro, who does not have a care in the world. Not only does he not worry about tomorrow, he doesn't worry about 5 minutes from now. He lives in the moment. And Charlie knows that Johnny has made a lot of important people mad. He's bad about not paying off his loans, not paying off his debts. And in that world, you can't do that and survive very long. He doesn't care. And Charlie is always running interference for him and feels a certain responsibility for him. You don't turn your back on people like this. You don't just push them to the side. And then we find later that Charlie is in a relationship with Johnny's cousin, Teresa, who in the film we find out has epilepsy, and for that very reason is seen as less than by those in her family. It's not just that she's disabled in their opinion, she's disposable. And he's talking about her with someone, and they said, that girl that's sick in the head. He said, oh, she's not sick in the head. She just has epilepsy. He said, yeah, like I said, she's sick in the head. And he knows their relationship would not be accepted by those closest to him. Nobody would understand it. So he's got this best friend who's constantly putting him in peril. He's constantly having to stick his neck out for him. He's got the girlfriend who nobody in his family would approve of him being associated with. And these two people both mean the world to him. And he's in a world that's saying, you can't be a part of the world you're in with them. So he's always got this tug of war going on. And you sense it in the film that he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. And he does not know how he is going to survive in this world with keeping this person happy, making his uncle happy, keeping Johnny Boy out of trouble, trying to get this relationship with Teresa off the ground to where they can be together and it not be some clandestine relationship. He doesn't know what to do about it. And you also get the sense that he wanted a better life. He'd like a life outside of this. But for him, he doesn't even know what that is. And it was an interesting perspective as a viewer to see this kind of underworld shown from this vantage point. Very few films had done that before. And this film really does that in the sense that this is their day-to-day life. This isn't about, well, this corner over here, and then this guy got rich, and then he double-crossed me, and then he double-crossed. This is truly a day-in-the-life story. We see the little dingy bars they hang out in, the pool halls, the things of that nature. And we see a world where, in all honesty, the epitome of success is being the cool guy in the bar. And there's a scene in this film when we've already seen Johnny Boy earlier in the film, but he makes an appearance in the bar, and he's got a girl on each arm, and the Rolling Stones song is playing. And as he's making his way down the bar, speaking to different people, nodding a hello here and there, we see in that moment, that's as good as it gets for a man like that. He's in his bar with his people on a Friday night, and he's number one, at least in that moment. Those moments don't last. They're fleeting. But you get the feeling that people like Johnny Boy that live in that world, those moments are the only thing to live for. Another interesting thing about this film is the use of music. This film starts off with the song Be My Baby by the Ronettes, which was produced by Phil Spector, who was also at one time married to Ronnie Spector, who created the Wall of Sound. And the way this film is shot and the way it's opened with the music playing and we're introduced to the characters, and it's almost like we're watching clips of a home movie. It sets the tone for this film in a way that is so unique and was so innovative at the time. And as I said just before that, the way the Rolling Stones is played when he's coming into the bar. The music in this film accompanies the scenes so beautifully. And I would have never thought in a gangster film, in a film about New York, that the song Be My Baby from the Ronettes would fit so well, and it does. And anybody who's watched Scorsese films later on knows in Goodfellas, when he's with Ray Liotta's with Lorraine Bracco, and they're walking through the bar, they have the song, And Then He Kissed Me by the Crystals. So we realized when we watched this film in 1973 that that's where this started with Scorsese, his appreciation for that kind of music and how well it can be integrated into a film that's a gangster film in a way that I don't think any other filmmaker had done before or really has done since. And Scorsese's a master at knowing that you don't need sinister music to accompany a brutal scene. And there's scenes in this film where people are fighting and in a pool hall and doing various things, and the song Mr. Postman's playing in the background. And hearing up-tempo music during scenes like that gives it a certain frenetic pace and a realism. You know, when it has to be sinister, we know what the filmmaker's doing. He's trying to manipulate us. Scorsese isn't doing that. And the yin and yang of those two together work so well. And the thing about this film, too, is it shows how these characters are real people with real moral issues. That Charlie wants to be loyal to the family, wants to make those in this underworld happy. At the same time, he wants to follow his heart and be good to his friend like Johnny Boy, who he knows is a worthless, no-account hood that's going to bring him nothing but trouble. He also wants to be with his girlfriend, who will cause his entire inner circle to ostracize him. And it shows that even though these people live outside the law, you know, run numbers, do things of that sinister nature, these are people with the same internal conflicts that a lot of us suffer from and suffer with. And a lot of films, the characters in gangster films are not really characters as much as they are caricatures. They don't seem like real people. And, you know, it's operatic. or it's glamorized. And we can't get past the hairstyle of the gangster, the fact that he's wearing these shades, or he's always got this large cigar in his mouth, or things of that nature. He doesn't even seem like a real person. In this film, it's real. And the interior scenes in the bars aren't glamorous. There's a scene where David Carradine, and how they got him to just do this scene, he's best known for Kung Fu, and his younger brother, Robert, shoots him in the film. And we find out later he did that because David Carradine, while he's drunk, insulted somebody who's trying to... But that scene in and of itself, where you just see a guy staggering around drunk, and you see the boy go into the bathroom and follow him and kill him, you feel that kill. It registers in a way that a lot of scenes and films don't. And one of the other things about this film is, as I said, how much it's a New York film. New York in the 70s is its own thing. That's a New York where you have Son of Sam, where Times Square was, go at your own risk. It was truly not the kind of place you go on vacation. So much was going on. You had the blackout in 1977. So many things. It was such a gritty, dark, scary, and sinister place. And this film, at times, feels like a documentary just following these characters around in their day-to-day life in that environment. And the conclusion of this film, we kind of know eventually Johnny Boy's luck runs out about the debts not being collected. Keitel can only run so much interference for him. And it comes to a kind of shootout and inevitable conclusion. And we just see the sadness in these outcomes. And what hit me was how they seemed inevitable. And how no one seemed to really give much credence to the idea of maybe swimming against the current. This is our path. It is what it is. And also, in that world, these men have their own honor code. And they are loyal to it. And even if it costs them everything, at the end of the day, what are you without that code? What are you without those people that have stood by you? Do you leave that world? And there are men. John Gotti was one of them. And there was a clip where he was talking to his son who was going to take a deal, and he looked at his son and he said, if it wasn't for rats and guys that took deals, these jails would be empty. To them, that was true. We have a code that we got to live by. And if everybody lived by our code, we could win. But it's because of those that rat us out or take deals or agree to wear wires and things of that nature, try to go straight. They're the ones that ruin it. This is who we are. This is what we are. And seeing a character like Charlie by Harvey Keitel, who hasn't made his peace with it, but doesn't know how to get out of it, doesn't know how to escape it. He never embraces it, but he also never gets out of it. It truly is a great film. Martin Scorsese is the director. I think that's about it. But if that's not enough, you got Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro. You can't go wrong. Until next time, thanks.